all the theory that I've learned in accelerators or in whatever, I think it's bullshit. Like it was not useful at all because it makes you feel that you are the loser. Making friends with other women entrepreneurs that have been through the same problems that I can like explain whatever is going on and they will get it was amazing. Our mission is for capital to flow into the hands of people that have been historically left outside of the system.
Welcome to How to Help a Few Billion People, a podcast where we feature entrepreneurs that prioritize people and the planet alongside their profits. In today's episode, we're going to dive in deep with Mercedes from Quipu. Quipu is a fascinating organization that started out as a localized community marketplace with their own community-specific currencies. But today it looks very, very different. Not only is it a microfinance organization providing loans to tens of thousands of small and micro entrepreneurs who make up over $1.4 trillion worth of the economy in LATAM, but they're also rapidly expanding not only to provide more cost-effective and equitable loans to small business owners, but also to use their very, very innovative AI-driven credit ranking technique in order to help entrepreneurs and small entrepreneurs and even individuals create their own credit worthiness in economies that don't traditionally reach to entrepreneurs in the bottom of the pyramid. It is a fascinating growth journey, and Mercedes is a thoughtful and insightful and very wise guest that has great advice on how to pivot your business model, how to find early stage capital to get your idea off the ground, how to find and work with a very diverse set of investors, and also how to build a really strong founding vision so that as the organization continues to grow, the founding team can be the strong glue that holds it together. Along the way, you're going to get all kinds of other tips and cool inspirational moments. It is a very, very lovely talk, and I can't wait for you all to listen and learn from Mercedes. So without further ado, let's dive into the show. Mercedes, welcome to the Helping Billions podcast. I am so excited that you're joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I got to learn of your organization, your business through the SoCap network, but I've also heard about it. Another Cartier Women's fellow was a previous guest on the episode as well, so I've heard your name a couple times. And I want to start this podcast by jumping into the problem that you set out to solve many years ago, right? From there, we'll jump into the business model and all these pieces, but can we, the theme of this podcast, how to help a few billion people, can we talk about the magnitude of the problem that you have set out to solve?
Yeah, of course. So I will concentrate in Latin America. That is where we are solving the problem. At the beginning, we hope to be a global company, but we are starting in Latin America. There's where we are from. There's a gap of funding to micro businesses of more than $1.4 trillion. And micro businesses are 1/10 businesses in the region are micro businesses. So we are talking about 9 out of 10. So we are talking about a really big, percentage of the businesses that are micro being less than 10 employees. So if 9 out of 10 of the businesses are micro and the gap is of more than 1.4 trillion, then we have a really big opportunity to serve these businesses.
Wow. Okay. So, and I think so. I'm based in the United States, right? And I think one of the biggest employers is actually small businesses, right? But
Yeah.
as individual entities, they don't have enough lobby power or finance power or anything, right? And so they're often kind of put on the outliers of support, right? And I think it sounds like that's what you're really countering across Latin America too, is these micro enterprises, in order to grow, need capital, but it's very hard for them to access capital to keep growing. Tell us a little bit more about, the problems that they're facing, why that capital is so important, and then ultimately what capital does for them when they're able to access it.
Yeah, of course. So, financial services are usually serving the people that have or that already have money. Like if you already have money, then it's easier to access financial services or get in debt. I always say that debt can kill you or it can save you, right? So it's not always good. But when we talk about productive activities, like what micro businesses do or independent workers do, because we work with both of them, usually it's money that comes to grow what they are already selling or to make them available to buy more supplies in months where they don't have enough, or they have an order and that they need to accomplish and then they get paid, how they can get funded to buy the supplies they need to serve that order that they are having. That's usually the problem that we are seeing, the lack of funding to buy supplies in order to even serve the orders that they are having. So there's where we see that this access to productive or to working capital can be detrimental. It can even, if you don't get it in the right time, then your business can die, right? We're talking about businesses that live usually month by month. And they are they are the engine of our economy, right? So that's why if they have the access to capital, then they can grow and then they can also exist and not die. And they can employ more people in their community usually.
And can you give us an example here? I don't know if you have like a favorite story, if you're allowed to have favorites, right? But can you give us an example of, one of these enterprises and even more like how capital enabled them to, fill in the blanks?
Yeah. So we have a customer that's called Rosa. She sells handbags, handcrafted handbags. She lives in Barranquilla, which is a city on the Caribbean coast. And when we met her, she was working with her daughter. They have a brand. They even have like an Instagram account where they sell their hand crafted bags. But as you know, she never had a credit history. So then her only option is the informal lender, the predatory lender, shark loans, these people that, payday lenders, like this type of loan that usually is very expensive and violent. And what she got to know was then she started building her credit history. We assessed her credit worthiness based on other type of data. And she was able to start with $100 loan. Now she got more than 6 loans with us, more than $4,000. And because of this, she was able to access a bigger fund from the government of 10K that allowed her to open her workshop. So now she's having 5 employees. She's having a store in one of the main malls in Barranquilla, in the city. So, we've seen how she progressed because she was able to access this capital. Usually people order her the bags, but then she needed money to buy the supplies in order to create the bags before getting paid. And that's why these $100 were really important at that point. And yeah, then she started growing. And that's one of our favorite stories.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think for people that aren't as familiar with like microfinance, right, or these small, right, 100, up to $1,000, $4,000 loans to micro entrepreneurs, like how catalytic it can be and how it can pull people out of these like not just like business detrimental debt cycles, but even like personal, kind of cycles depending on where capital is pulled from. And so you mentioned, like predatory lenders or informal economy lenders. Can you give us an example of like what type of percent somebody like Rosa was paying for her debt, right? For a loan,
Yeah.
prior to the work that you do at
Mhm.
Quipu.
Yeah, so it could be 20% per week. Um, yeah, which is very
Yeah.
expensive. Very
Wow. So we're
expensive.
talking we're talking about 9 out of 10 organizations fall into this category, paying interest rates of like 20% per week. Right? I mean, like
Exactly. Exactly.
even for a year, 20% is expensive, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, in the US, of course. In Latin America, not so much, but in the US, it is. But actually, right now, credit cards in the US are like, charging
True.
more than 20%
True,
annual.
true.
So capital is expensive right now. Like money is expensive right now, but like for this type of population, it's even more expensive. And it's not coming just, in how expensive it is in terms of the money they need to pay, but also they are violent. If you don't pay, they will go to your house and like they're literally violent, you
Wow.
know. So and people fall in this trap, and then it's really difficult to get out of it. So they get into a loop of, you know, debt to pay debt and debt to pay debt, and it's very difficult to get out of this trap. Um, and what's happened, because microfinance existed for many years, right? And what is happening is that microfinance institutions are not being able to serve this type of population, because either they ask to do the community groups, the Grameen kind of style of, you know, solidarity groups where your group members are your guarantors, or they look at the credit bureau, and if you don't have a credit history or that credit history is damaged, then they will reject you. And the building of the groups is very expensive. So then capital is very expensive. It's like microfinance institutions are not, providing capital at good rates, because the operation of maintaining the groups and having people on the ground, you know, it's not cheap. So we are seeing that as you know, as banks and neobanks were able to, in a way, challenge the traditional industry of banking, we can do the same in microfinance. And these new neobanks are not getting into the bottom of the pyramid in a way. So there's where we saw that there were a lot of things to develop and to do.
Yeah. Well, and so I'd love to kind of get into that story here, and um, you mentioned like the Grameen's, right? Other microfinance organizations that do serve the bottom of the pyramid. Many of these are philanthropically funded, right? And even philanthropically funded, their cost of capital is still high because of some of the programmatic interventions, or they're not utilizing systems that already exist within some of these economies. So I'd love to hear from you. How did you come to tackle this problem, but with the purpose driven business model, right, as opposed to a philanthropic business model? How did this idea come to be?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like what's different now than when these, MFI systems started to exist is that people have digital wallets, like, and digital payments, mostly most of the global south. This trend started in Kenya with the M-Pesa, but we see this all through Latin America. Each country has its main digital wallet that started to be used mostly after COVID, because subsidies were disbursed through digital wallets. So then we are seeing a high penetration of wallets, and also because of COVID, a high penetration of smartphones. And that's what it's allowing us to actually make the allocation of capital cheaper, and starting using data that was non-existent before. Before, it was impossible to trace the payments, or people were just using cash, right? Or it was impossible to trace business if you were not going in person to check the business, right? So we said there might be a way right now with the technology. We started in 2021. So with the technology that existed at that point and now more than ever, and the information that we can collect online, there should be a way where this market can be tackled from a market perspective. I mean, this problem could be solved from a market perspective and not just from a philanthropic perspective. And that's what we have demonstrated in the last years, that there was another way to prove risk, and there was a more efficient way of disbursing capital and collecting capital to the bottom of the pyramid in a way.
Yeah, incredible. And I want to get even more into like some of the business
Yeah,
model
yeah.
piece, but even more on like a personal kind of perspective. Bring me on the personal journey here of, especially coming out of COVID, right? Out of all the problems to solve, right? All just the self-care that had to be taken, right? You went for a very, very challenging one, right? One that organizations haven't been able to solve yet. Tell us a little bit more just from the personal side of what motivated you towards this sector specifically, and to take the first steps into social entrepreneurship.
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from Argentina, so I was born and raised in Argentina. My parents have a small business, medium-sized business in Argentina. So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. But I decided to study political science. I didn't want to, be as my dad. I was like doing the opposite, like saying, I want to change the world and I will do it through policy. So I started working with cities in Argentina on their policy to serve the informal economy. And at the same time, I was volunteering for 5 years at a microfinance institution inside an organization called Techo. And I saw, the disconnection that was there was not a good connection between what people needed on the ground and these small businesses needed and what policy was doing. At that point, I decided I wanted to do a master's, and I got a fellowship and a scholarship, and I went to do my master's at MIT in cities. So it was like focused on how we can solve problems in cities, specifically the informal economy in cities. And but I went with this background on policy. Like I didn't know what was a startup, I didn't know what was a social company, like I didn't know that until I got there and I started learning about not just about technology and how technology could solve problems, maybe broader than policy in a way. But at the same time, I started learning about startups and how, a business could be a way to scale solutions. I was really a skeptic of that. Like I was coming from working at NGOs, think tanks, coming from another area. Um, and as I started learning, I started like saying, okay, I want to solve the problem I saw in the neighborhoods where I worked at the microfinance institution. And I think that there might be something that we can do more that can scale more than the group lending. That was a model that I was implementing. And technology can be useful for this. So the first idea was not the one that I'm doing now. The first idea that I had was actually called Quipu Market, which was a marketplace where informal businesses in these popular neighborhoods, informal settlements, can upload what they were selling and transact with one another using a digital currency, a community currency that was just useful for each neighborhood. So this was like quite crazy. I met my co-founders, and I got a grant from school, from a challenge inside MIT, and then we got into an incubator, and we started working on this idea. We launched this idea, and it didn't work. And then, but this is maybe another, I'm taking too long to answer the question, but
No, this is great.
because it's very long,
Yeah,
in all the processes that we got into what we are doing now, it's not that I woke up one day and I said, oh, let's build an alternative credit scoring and then try to give working capital. No, the first idea was different, was more utopic, actually. Like I'm really a utopic person and I want to really change the economic system. And at that point, I was like, okay, let's try to launch and implement this. And while we were implementing the first idea is that we understood that the main problem was the access to working capital. That was 2021, because the first idea was 2018. So then while I was studying, and then I went to New York to work for the mayor's office, working at the Office of Minority and Women-Owned Businesses. So I was always on the same kind of topic. But then it was 2021 when I moved to Colombia. I started to try out the pilot, and then we found out the idea was not working. But the idea that we needed to develop was different. So I don't think that you just you could be passionate about the topic, but then the solution comes by implementing different ideas, right?
Yeah. I love this. So many threads to pull on, and one that I want to grab on first, because I think it's what connects us social entrepreneurs together, right? Is use the word. I'm a little utopic here. I believe we can change the economy, right? And I think that's part of the theory here of this podcast, right? Is by featuring entrepreneurs that believe that we can exert this positive or positive pressure on the economy to exist and business exists to really solve deep, lasting social and environmental problems. Bring me inside of your person and character a little bit more. What gives you hope? Why invest so much in that more utopic vision that you have? Where does that come from?
Yeah. I actually don't know where it comes from. I have no idea. But since the beginning, I was like this, that's why I decided to study political science. My dad was like, why are you studying that? I don't understand what you can even work after studying that, I'm the first graduate from my family. from university. So I was the first one that had the chance to study. So my dad was like, "Why aren't you studying something that can help the family business?" And I was like, "I want to run away from family business. Like, I don't want to do that. I hate business." But then I ended up doing business, right?
Yeah, here you are.
But in the end, I don't know. It was like something inside me of like wanting to see things differently and feeling that I have the power to change it. Because I think that most of us want to see a different world, right? Like there might be few people that are happy with the world as it is. I don't know. I hope so, right? But then I think that few of us feel the drive and the conviction that we can do something better, and we just take the risk. So I
Yeah.
think I don't know from where it's coming from, but I know I'm a risk taker. I moved to the US and then I moved to Colombia. This is not my country. Like, I just came here because there was the opportunity to build the startup. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a risk taker and I'm a believer that things can be different and that I can do something different. Like, I'm not just staying on how bad the world it is, but I'm seeing how the world could be. And I think that I think that people are good. I don't think that people are bad, and that's some people like just think that people are bad. I think that people actually are good and that the system are it's making them selfish in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't
I,
know.
I, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that was a little kind of tangent of where we kind of normally go in the podcast, but you use that word. I had to grasp it. On just a personal reflection, I read a book during the depths of COVID by Rutger Bregman, called Humankind.
Yeah.
And it's he set out to say like all these books portray humans as kind of being like at the end of the day like evil beings, and he's like, but is that true? What does history say? And actually went and his thesis is like, really, no, like we default towards kindness, we default towards goodness, but there's systemic problems that of course stand in the way of that, but at the end of the day there's like humans always trying to. So anyway, it was a very uplifting kind of book for me, and it seems like you got there just naturally on your own, and I feel very connected to
Yeah,
what you
yeah, I
said.
need to read the book. I think I know
Yeah.
what the book is, but I didn't read. Yeah,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course.
Cool.
Of
Well,
course.
well, thank you for sharing that. So, okay, let's jump back into the business side of this. So you launched a first model, which was a little bit more kind of utopic community marketplace. Um, you said it didn't work. How did you move through that pivot into the early days of the Quipu business model?
Hmm. Yeah, so I and while we were implementing the marketplace, so we launched the marketplace was community marketplaces. So each neighborhood had its own marketplace with its own currency because we wanted the money to stay locally and foster transactions inside the communities. Um, like we took this idea from like thousands of community currencies that are around the world, and it's not that we created the concept in community currencies. No, we just like copied what was out there, but tried to scale it in a startup way, in a way. So by doing so, we were like literally this was 2021, was still COVID. I moved to Colombia in a humanitarian flight going out of the US. So like so that's why I'm
Wow.
quite crazy. So then like I got here with my co-founders, and we started going like to the neighborhoods, uploading people into the app. The app was shitty, like was terrible, because that's how like apps work at the beginning, are like terrible.
Yep, that's
So it
it.
was terrible. So like 2 hours uploading each business, like helping them take the pictures of the product and like description of the products, whatever, and explaining the currency. And then we tried many ways, and we spent like a year doing this. Something good it was that we had a grant at that point. This is something that maybe we can touch on later, of like
Yeah.
what type of funding it's good at the beginning to really innovate and iterate a product. So we iterated, that was not working, was really difficult to scale, was difficult to monetize. And we noticed that actually what they needed, and mostly after COVID, was working capital to buy supplies again and start selling again, because they had their fridge, their oven, the food truck, but they were not having supplies to start, cooking the hamburgers again, right? So, and as in the formal economy, if you don't work, then you don't get paid. You depend on your hands. If all your family got sick, then you didn't make any earning. So at that point, a loan to buy again working capital was really crucial, and nobody was giving out loans to them, not even the microfinance institution. At that point, we started working with a microfinance institution. They were not accepting them. So, and we saw that the predatory lender was there, and we saw that we started thinking how the things that we're seeing with our eyes, because we're here in the businesses, like uploading them into the app, how we can transfer this offline data into online data and start seeing if this data can help us predict their risk. And the first data point that we captured were the pictures that actually they uploaded into the marketplace to sell the product, right? So that was the first data point. And then we started asking them to upload more. So they uploaded videos of the business, showing the inventory and stock. They, started answering questions that we were asking them in the onboarding process. Then a lot of that data points were not working, like later. Like, you need to capture as much data as you can, allocate the capital, and then see which type of data was actually, predicting risk and what is not working. And that's how we got to the point of the loans and the risk assessment. So that was the process.
Wow. And so in the early days, you were actually giving out loans. Like, you were assessing risk and you were giving out.
We're still giving out loans. Yeah. So
Yeah.
at the early days, we needed to do that because
Yeah.
we tried to do a partnership with an MFI, and their process was so slow. And still with our data, they were using their same process. So it was very difficult to scale the solution. And we said, you know what, let's start giving out $10 loans short term, so then we can build a data set faster. We literally did a research, like we gave 50% women, 50% men. We needed people not paying us because that's the way you train the model. And then when we built enough, we started growing the loan allocation up to the point that now it's completely profitable and has like good unit economics. So we're still allocating capital based on our data. But as I was telling you, like before we started, our theory of change is that if we are able to prove ourselves that this data is useful and these people that were rejected now can be accepted by us, if someone else uses our data to accept them, then we change the rules of the risk assessment in the traditional banking system. And that's what we want to do,
Gotcha. So you're proving the model works. You're proving the economics of it makes sense.
Yeah.
You yourself as a mission-driven but still profitable enterprise.
We make the company sustainable.
Yep. And then you're able to then take that model and say, hey, existing banks, existing MFIs, existing fintechs, whoever, if you use our model, you can get essentially more customers into the model.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Okay. You mentioned funding. And so I'm so curious here because it seems like you went from an organization that was using technology, right, to support a marketplace, right, to improve lending. But it really sounds like you're on the road to more of like a data and tech company, right? And your background is political science. I'd love to hear more about this journey of, and I want to tie it to the fundraising aspect as well. So you had your first grant. I'm assuming at some point that kind of started to run out. How did you yourself capitalize the business once that grant was running out? And, even to a point where then you were able to lend money yourself.
Yeah. So when we started, and I was able to move to Colombia because when I was in New York, I got like we were having a prototype running in Colombia, and the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, they have a lab of innovation where they developed at that point a line of funding for existing prototypes in Colombia. And the first one they chose was our prototype.
Amazing.
You know that in this journey there's luck. Like there's something that there's points when we are like, okay, we will die, and then like something happens. You don't know how. Well, that happened a lot of times to us. Yeah. So at that point, like this woman told me like, you know what, we chose you, and we will give Quipu $150K grant to start. We're like, okay, this is amazing. I will move. I'm leaving the US and I'm moving to Colombia and we'll make this happen. So then that we were like 4 people, we were like not a lot of people at that point, and we used that funding to try out the model for a year. At the end of that year, we were already uploading the people to allocate loans. So all that grant helped us to prove the model, to prove that the first model was non-working, and to prove that there was another possible model, right? Like that was the result. And at that point, that was the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. At that point, the market was really good. So I started fundraising from angel investors. So we got 2 investors. One was the MIT Design X, the incubator that incubated us. They said, okay, we will give you like a first check, really small check. And then we got another investor from Mexico that I met through an incubation program, another incubation program, because we are in all the programs, and that's how we meet people. So those 2 were the first ones that believe on us. And then when we started showing traction, we did a pre-seed round of $1 million. This was 2022. So it's like 2021, it didn't work, but we were grant funded. 2022, we got a first angel round of 100K, and then we were able to raise the pre-seed from other type of investors.
Yep.
And then there was a seed, and now there's another round. So yeah, like it was like, building year over year. This year we reached breakeven. So, we are at a different position. But still, like, funding was always an issue.
Yeah. Especially for the business model that makes so much sense. And can we, one of the areas that we see entrepreneurs struggle with, right, especially if they have and are setting out to tackle this like very systemic, like social problem, right? Access to finance. Protecting your mission, right, and staying true to your founder's mission and why you started this in the first place as you start to raise funds can sometimes be challenging depending on who you take capital from and what type of capital you take and what type of instrument. How have you been able to protect your mission as you've been growing here, as you've been getting more investors?
Yep. I think is because we don't have like just one big investor. We have like 20 investors. So then none of them is able to move our decisions. Like, they don't have enough power, none of them, to move where we are heading. They can recommend or they can suggest, but we in the end do whatever we want at this point. If we are able, of course, to show results, but it's not that they are like here telling me like, no, you need to do. They don't have the power to do that. So as we raise on safes, we didn't. We at this point, we haven't done a price round. So then I don't have a board. So then we make the decisions, and we are expecting to stay like this up to the Series A. That is the next step that we hope to do in 12 months, more or less.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I think we need to keep the decisions in the founding team as much as we can. And the other thing that worked for us is that none of them is the majority, like has majority and can like guide our decisions in a way, because we have like many investors.
Many investors. Okay, so in the early stages, so you used a safe for those not familiar, simple agreement for future equity, and so you're essentially staying away from like valuation conversations and
future.
And board control.
You need to put the future valuation, of course.
Correct, but there's some kind of flexibility in what that is, and importantly, you've retained like governance control at the board level, and then of course in the leadership team level. And so I'm imagining there's also a lot of diligence of like these investors also being like very mission aligned, very kind of flexible and open here. Is that accurate? Like, would you feel like as you're meeting with investors, like do you like how do you suss out for like mission alignment and impact alignment?
Yeah, I will be completely honest. I think at the beginning, I was open to whatever, you know, it's what happens. Like
Yeah.
when you need the money, it's like,
You
okay,
take it. Yeah.
I will, if I'm talking with an impact investor, I will tell you my impact story. If I'm talking with a market driven investor, I will tell you how big is this market, right? And that's what we need to be as entrepreneurs. It's like we are chameleons. But depending on the stage, right now, and I can say this after I closed this last round, my position was completely different. Like, first, I feel more confident about what I have built. I feel confident that we have really developed something different, and that I was confident about the value of the company, and I was more confident of, okay, who I want to bring on board, because I've seen how it is to bring people on board, that they give you the money but they never come back, or they never like call you. And right now, to make the next step, I need people that are working along me and that really believe in the mission, and that really believe that this can be, a huge solution. I'm not open to just money anymore, because I know how valuable is the company. But I think that as entrepreneurs, we evolve. And as people, right, we evolve. And I'm 33 right now. Mercedes of 33 is not the same one of Mercedes of
Yeah.
28 when she moved to Colombia, trying to make this happen and accepting whatever was coming. Because I didn't know that I was going to make something happen, right? So it changes. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm really aware of who I'm bringing in. I think at the beginning, I was not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And, one of the other emerging trends that we're seeing is also, protecting mission within some governing documents, right? Whether that's board governance, or even that's if, in terms of legal incorporation documents or third party certifications like People and Planet certifications. Is that something that, maybe early for where you are, but is that something that you all have like talked about, done, or thinking about?
Hmm. We haven't, to be honest. Like, I'm not thinking about these governance problems of the future. But of course, when it comes the time that it will be like, as I told you, in the next round, then we will need to think about it, right? So yeah. At
Yeah.
this
Starting to
point,
post.
we are trying a lot to be aligned between founders.
Yep.
Making a lot of effort towards, like, having all the discussions we need to have before we face the problems, in a way
Yeah.
that are not now, but like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's such an interesting point to me. So I think, and I'd love to even like bring me into the founder conversation, right? Where you have that, because I think it's a lot of the world that I'm surrounded by, right, talks about how do you protect organization mission through fundraising, through acquisition, through merger, through growth, through leadership transitions. And so there's this, I think, growing movement towards like benefit corporations or social purpose corporations or People and Planet First certified organizations that really do embed that in their governing documents, right? Their incorporation documents, their board governance documents, the compensation of their executives. But that is for certain stages of growth where that becomes more and more important. But those conversations actually aren't even possible until the founding team is aligned at like the human level of there. So I'm so glad you brought that up. How like, I mean, I'm guessing at this stage, probably everybody is on somewhat similar alignment in terms of doing this as a mission, but what types of conversations do you have with each other? What types of checkpoints do you have? Do you document anything? I'm kind of looking for the ins and outs here of like
of
how you
course,
stay
yeah,
aligned as a founding team.
yeah. We didn't do that up to now. Like, we are going through these conversations, and we started these conversations this year when we needed to decide if we were going to grow, if we wanted to be the huge lending company, or if we wanted to be the huge scoring company. Like, and we decided that because of what drive us, because we were born as a tech company and our backgrounds are like, beyond political science, like our backgrounds are more focused on the product, or we are product driven, and we want things to scale, and not just we needed to like get aligned in the mission, even though we had it written there like somewhere, like it's important to bring it back. So this year we said, okay, our mission is for capital to flow into the hands of people that have been historically left outside of the system. And that means being Quipu the one that provides the capital or any other institution providing the capital. And then when we were aligned on this, we said we are really ambitious, right? So because we are ambitious, let's go for the most ambitious solution, which will be, let's build a credit bureau for the informal economy. Let's challenge the risk industry, not just the lending industry. And there's where, all the energy started to also flow. Like, it was not just us, but also all the energy of the team, all the energy of the goals that we were seeking. And so that's the type of conversations that we've been having. And then the other type of conversations that we've been having is, what happens if someone of us wants to leave before the company has a value? For how much would you will be leaving? For example, what will be what will we require from each of us? What happens if I need to take some months off because of whatever reason? I don't know, things like that are like really practical, but if you never talked about them, then they get as a complicated at the point that you need to make the decision. So that's the type of conversations that we are having right now.
Yeah. Actually. I love this. Is there how did this come to be? Is there any startup guidance that you got or people that you follow that really encouraged you to have these conversations? Or did it just kind of come out naturally? How did it come to be?
Yeah. No, it actually came naturally, because the business took us there. The business took us to the point where it was asking us, in a way, like Quipu was asking us, okay, decide, you will grow the lending or you will do the other one, because then the raising capital is different if you go for the B2B SaaS scoring or if you go to the lending one, right? Which one will you want to be bigger? And so it was the business that was leading us there. We call it, here in Colombia, there's an author of a method called the emerging strategy. And there's another author from MIT called Otto Scharmer. He talks about, I don't know if you heard about Theory U, and he talks about leading from the emerging future. And it's basically how you start leading from what is emerging. And that's what happened to us in this process of saying, no, let's be the credit bureau. This is even bigger. It's not just lending. And when we understood that, then it was like, okay, this is what it's emerging, and what's all the possibility that it's out there in a way.
Yeah, incredible. Let's keep on this thread of possibilities. Where do you see the organization going? What do you hope to accomplish by I don't know, 2027, 2030, whatever horizon you're kind of looking at right now, right? More than 1 year, right? Less than 5. Where do you see the organization going?
Yeah. So I see the organization going to, as I said, to be this Equifax, Expedient of the informal economy, where we give back the power of data to the people, and they decide with whom they want to share their data, and the banks bid to give them better conditions. So it's the other way around. It's not that they need to go and beg each bank to the products that the bank is already having, but actually it's, people, by the data they are having, we transform that data into risk assessment data, and we are able to match them with the best opportunity that can be out there. And we make this segment that now it's excluded, we make this segment attractive to the traditional financial system. We think that why it's not attractive right now, because there's a gap of data. That's our hypothesis. And if we are able to bridge the gap, then we can also bridge the gap of funding. So we see ourselves being that connector by being able to understand data in a way that can be helpful for banks to make a decision, and for people also to, access the best conditions that they can in the market.
Yeah, incredible. I'm inspired. I mean, I know I'm not like a micro entrepreneur, but I'm like, I want this service. Like this needs to exist here. Yeah,
it needs
incredible.
To exist.
Yeah. That's true. Incredible. So one of the things I want to go back to fundraising a little bit because um, and I know it's been through angels, but earlier I mentioned that there's another Cartier Women's Initiative on the podcast, Claire, and from
Ah,
Farm to
okay.
Feed, and she had shared about some of the bias that she encountered as a woman fundraising, building a business, and here one thing that stands out is like, you know, you present female, right? And uh, you're also like a tech, business in a country that is not your own. And I'm curious, is that, do you have a shared experience there with Claire? Like, have you encountered much bias as you've been here on the entrepreneurial journey, on the fundraising journey? And, if so, how are you able to like counter that and move through that?
Yeah, so we raised from all the types of investors. So we have VCs, we have social impact, we have corporate investors, we have the IDB. So like it's not just angels, it's like,
Everybody, yeah.
everybody. I know like yeah, how to deal with like the different types. And I think that, I don't think it was a barrier, like to be honest. Like I think sometimes we say like, oh no, I didn't get funded because I'm a woman. I never felt that. I actually felt like, I don't know, I felt okay, like in all my conversations and in all my process. Maybe at the beginning I didn't feel okay, but because now that I see it in retrospective, it's not because I was a woman, it's because I didn't know how to fundraise at all. And I was just like, learning as I was doing. Um, but I don't think it was because I was a woman. I don't know, like, maybe some questions that they ask me that, are like not comfortable. Like, they are like, oh, who did you get married with that you live in Colombia? Like, they never thought that, okay, you moved to Colombia because you wanted to build a business. That if there's a man, like, they will never ask a guy if they got married
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why they are there, like,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
care? Like, yeah. So like that's the type of questions that I get. And then like, yeah, I think most of the issue is around that. The other issue is that, yeah, like where usually investors or like the meeting between investors and founders happen, it's like in the happy hour or maybe like after the event, going for drinks. I don't like that. Like I feel very uncomfortable at those spaces. So like, yeah, so then like, but I don't know if it is a disadvantage because then I have conversations in a coffee store instead of like in the happy hour. But I know that the bond that they create between uh, the male co-founder versus the women co-founder, it's different. Like it's kind of like we have a professional relationship. It's difficult for me to build like a friend relationship, kind of like,
Yeah.
no, that's very difficult for me. um so that's because most of our investors are men, I think, most of them. So then that's a difference, I think.
Yeah.
And then it's like how we can learn. We need to learn since the beginning to be professionals at this, at
Yeah.
fundraising. And nobody taught us how to do it, most
Yeah.
of us just like learn by doing. And that's something that we should be changing, and mostly for women, of course.
Yeah. Are there, you talked about learning fundraising. Were there any like tools or frameworks or guides or anything that you used or people you followed that you found were like the most helpful? Or was it really like trial by fire? Like you got out there, you
I
had conversations,
just
you learned and
All the theory that I've learned in accelerators or in like, whatever, I think it's bullshit. Like it was not useful at all because it makes you feel that you are the loser. Because they are like, oh, in Silicon Valley, like the method is you need to make the FOMO and people need to, invest in, I don't know, a month. And if you don't close the round in a month, then you are lost. And then you feel like, oh, I'm the loser. Like, I'm taking more than a month. Like I'm the worst.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
you speak with the other guys or women, and for all of them, it's the same. So I think the best is talking with peers, not just like learning from the experts.
Yeah.
So for me, it was talking with peers, and yeah, in the end, is learning by doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That resonates so much. Is yeah, one anecdote I just need to share from one of our previous guests, Minaj from Drinkwell. He did talk about how one of his investors he met because he ended up dancing with his wife on the dance floor.
Oh my
And
God.
so yeah, so anyway, I'm like, me never. Like, no, like, yeah. But he spoke a lot about that, of the importance of like meeting people where they were. And so if that was a happy hour, it was a happy hour. If it was dance floor, it was a dance floor. Like he was very like he understood. So I'm curious, like, because for me, I'm like, worst nightmare, never. It sounds like for you as well. You're like, no, I'll meet you for coffee. Like I'll meet you in an office. Like we can talk. How
I
did you end up
mean,
finding? Oh yeah, please.
yeah, no, no. I mean, I go to all the events, but I don't feel comfortable. And I'm like super extrovert, and I'm really social, but I don't feel comfortable as a woman when there's drinks and people are getting drunk. Like that's, it's no, it's a nightmare because you don't know the outcome, and you don't know if how I will react if something happens. And like,
Yeah,
that like the line is like blurred, and I don't like that. So it's easier
yeah,
for men to like meet in a happy hour where there are drinks. For women, it's not as easy. We can still do it and we show up, but
yeah,
it's not as easy. That's the
yeah.
difference, I think.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And then, so when you're at the events, then how do you, before the happy hour, right, where some
Yeah.
people do meet their investors or partners or whatever, how would you move very strategically through these events to find,
Yeah.
the right people to talk to and grab time with them? What was that like for you?
Mm. So yeah, so I'm an expert on this.
Great.
Like not like I don't want to, yeah, like because I learned, by doing. But basically, I like before going, I look at the list of who will be there. I add them on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. So then if you get connected with me on LinkedIn, you kind of know who I am before you talk with me, and that's very important, like trying for people to know who you are before they meet you. So I, connect on LinkedIn, send a message in the note. I'm not even paying LinkedIn premium. I'm just like traditional LinkedIn, just like, send a note when I connect saying like, I will be at this event. This is what I do. I would like to talk. But I take the time to do it like 1 week and a half before, and not the day of the event. That is when usually people are connecting through those apps of the events. So then I like set up my agenda before going. Then I leave space for serendipity because there's a lot of serendipity that happens in the event. And if you have the full agenda, then you don't have space for serendipity. So I leave some space for serendipity, and I try to be a speaker in the event. That changes completely, right? Like if people, if you're a speaker, then you are positioned in a different way. Even if they don't go to your panel, they might talk to you because you were a speaker,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my strategy to connect. So, but at the beginning, when I was not a speaker because nobody knew me, I was just chatting to like sending like requests as crazy, and like setting up like half-hour meetings. That's how I raised our first round, actually, like
Oh wow.
in these type of events, not talking, like I was not known by any, nobody
Yeah.
knew me. But it was just like in-person conversations, and that works for me, like when I have in-person meetings. And uh, that's better, I think, than Zoom.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know so much virtual calls. Here we are on yet another call, but yeah,
That's true.
um, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So and um, uh, I think like a common thread here, right? That I've seen. It's like this. Sure, serendipity, but like all this work, it's like it sounds like you know who's going to be there. You've done some homework. You've right anything you can to give yourself some positive PR around the event as well. But then also just like really diligent, getting introductions, following up, and then finding that time to meet in person at these early stages. I think is so critical.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I want to shift gears a little bit, kind of to present day. So you've told me a little bit about your growth trajectory, and one of the things is as we were talking, I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this. You're like, oh, based on when the show is gonna like actually publish, like our numbers are gonna be quite a bit.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit now about as you're kind of growing and the pace of growth is quickening, right? change starts to happen within an organization, right? You're onboarding new people. There's like more issues. There's lots of unknowns. There's how just like are you as, a leader at your organization, how are you preparing yourself to kind of move through, or what are you already doing to like prepare yourself for this next stage of growth?
Hmm. Yeah, so I something that happened this year to me is that was super positive. Two things. One is that one of the investors that got into this round is an ex-entrepreneur that he went through all the process of building a company and selling a company of B2B software to banks. So he's from the industry, he understands, exactly how this works. And it's the first time that someone is actually working along me. Like, I feel him like really close. And I feel that it's someone that I can share, everything that is going on. And he's enjoying, the work with us. Like, so
Yeah.
I feel so grateful for this person that I met. So I feel that like those type of people are the ones that are helping me um, grow as an entrepreneur and as a leader. Um, and he's introducing me to others, right? Like to
Mm,
others
hmm.
entrepreneurs that are like, that went through all the process. Maybe they are not really known, but they are people that like, make it happen and
Yeah.
had like really huge exits actually. So like I'm having these people around me and I'm feeling more confident, and I feel that like I'm looking more and more to have these people around. So that's one of the things.
And
And then
sorry,
the other one, yeah.
sorry, do you mind, just because I think it's really interesting, is he an investor?
He ended up, yeah, he started
He
like, he wanted to meet me, he started
Okay.
helping, and then he invested. Yeah.
And investor. Okay. And then you mentioned some of these other people, like really in the mechanics here, there's two threads I want to pull on, right? One is like, how do you decide what to share, what not to share, especially if they're an investor, right? Because sometimes there's dynamics. And then secondly, just the mechanics of, as you have more people, have you built something formal, like a formal advisory team, or is it just informal? Like, are you just building these relationships and grabbing advice from folks as time goes on?
hmm So, yeah, so in this case, like, yeah, he got in as an investor. So, it's like, no, and I share everything. I share everything. Like, there's no sense to hide mm, what is going on. Like, he already invested, like, he's
Yeah.
already in, he's on our side. So, like, I
Yeah.
share absolutely everything. And I think that they also enjoy that. Like, they are people that love to operate. They've been on our side, so like they want to be there working on the bad things, not just on the beautiful numbers, right?
Yeah.
So and before he invested, I also shared everything, and that was what actually built trust among us. He was like, "Oh, this woman is like just involving me. I love this," and like she's just saying exactly what's going on. And what's happened is that if you don't say exactly what's going on, people notice, and like
Yeah.
they need to know the bad and the good before they get in. um and then I'm bringing other investors, and I'm structuring advisory shares.
You are.
So
Okay.
at this point, yes, because now we need people that are super active in the advising. Before, if we had like some mentorship or like 1 hour now and then,
Sure.
but now like I'm bringing people that went through, like industry leaders that went through some of the things that we need to do. For example, like an advisor on risk, that she was like 10 years in a bank and she bought scores from the bank, so she knows like the other side.
Okay.
So I needed to have someone like her, and we brought her in with advisory shares, and she's dedicating a lot of time. um so yeah,
Very cool.
that's like, I think this is really useful. We need that. Like if we
Yeah.
want to grow, we need that.
Yep, that's fascinating. So you actually have a class of shares, advisory shares. And can I ask, so financially, like you're not compensating them with cash in the short term, but they do have
Just by
equity in the
vesting.
company.
So they have like a traditional vesting with time,
Yeah.
but also the vesting can be accelerated if they fulfill certain milestones.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's very robust from an advisory relationship organization.
Yeah,
Is
if
there
not,
anything that
if
you,
not, they
yeah.
don't work. If not, they
Yeah.
are just like there by time, and then you are like, oh, did they do something or not? Like.
Yeah. 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 I
Um,
love it. Is there any like framework or tool or thing that you've read about that we could share with readers about how you did that, or it was just like, hey, we just talked to people, we devised it based on need,
yeah.
and you kind of invented your own here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no,
Yeah,
yeah, it was us like
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
creating
love
the
it.
model, you know, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and for me it was very important to put on the table the what Kipu needs for the next step. Like beyond your role as like your role as an advisor is like what Kipu as a whole needs.
yeah,
So if you are able to contribute, I don't know, X amount in revenue, for example, or for partnerships with new banks, whatever, then that's how you start, like, converting your equity.
yeah. Very, very interesting. I think it's great to hear. I'm so glad you shared like
So,
some of those
and
tidbits.
actually,
Yeah.
there's one entrepreneur that you should connect with her. She's also a Cartier fellow, but her name is Comal. She's based
Okay.
in Chile. And when I was trying to negotiate with a term sheet with an investor, and I called her, and she told me, you know what, in negotiation, you if you need to make the pie bigger. So it's not about how much you get and how much I get, but actually is how much we can grow the pie. If because of your actions we are growing the pie and Kipu is valued more because the pie is bigger, then it's fine if you get a bigger
Yeah.
chunk, right? But we need to make sure that the pie is getting bigger. And that's
Yeah.
what we defined in each of the advisory relationships.
Interesting. Okay. I love that. I love that thinking. I want to
Yeah.
steal that. So I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for sharing
Use it.
that.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah,
helpful
yeah,
for
yeah.
me.
Yeah, very, very cool. Um, okay. We are time is flying as it can. This is fact. I feel like there's so many places that we could still go. I know I interrupted you just on this last thread. You said like first, and you talked about the advisory
Yeah.
thread. Yeah. Do you remember what
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you were gonna say next?
Because it's connected even when what I was telling you about Komal, the women entrepreneur I called. This year also I put a lot of energy in building more relationships with female entrepreneurs that are at the same stage that I am or a little bit, on top of where I am. And this was key. Like, making friends with other women entrepreneurs that have been through the same problems that I can like explain whatever is going on and they will get it. Um, was was amazing. Like I'm really
Yeah.
happy of that happened this year. So yeah, it has a lot to do with how we build relationships with peers
Yeah.
and just and being honest, like not trying to sell what we don't have and like sell, in Argentina we say sell smoke. It's
Ah.
like how we don't sell smoke, how we are like
Yeah.
saying and being vulnerable about what actually we're facing, and then it's when the friendship happens, and that's really helpful, and we need that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Two books that I loved, one called Connect, the other one called Platonic. And they're almost like books into a little bit of the social psychology of like how do you build friendships and connections and move into more like deeper conversations. So I'm curious with you in terms of seeking these entrepreneurs out, are these people that you've met through your different like fellowships and accelerator programs? Did you like meet them at conferences and just like be like, hey, come be my friend? Or like, how did you even start to have some of these like peer to peer conversations where you could explore these things in greater detail?
Yeah, it's a funnel, right? Like everything is a funnel. So at the beginning, like you make a lot of connections, and then like you click with some people, and then you stick with
Yeah.
like two, three people, right? Um, so it was through the fellowships. Yeah, like the Cartier fellowships, amazing. There's where I met a lot of women where I feel I can tell them or ask them whatever. Um, that was really great. And then yeah, it was like fellowships, events, and then when I moved to Medellin, where I live now, I didn't have friends, right? So I needed to make friends. So I started to build a group on WhatsApp where like I was putting interesting women I was meeting in this group. And then I started organizing some like breakfast or places where we can meet. And that's how like, we started connecting. And I think that, it takes a lot of energy to make friends. And when we are more than 30, it makes more difficult, like, years make making new friends
It's
more
real.
difficult. um, but if you are an immigrant, as I am, and you live in a place where you were not born, and I don't have my friends from school here, so like you
Yeah.
need to put that effort
Yeah.
of going out, and like at the beginning it's a lot of energy. Then it's like just they give you energy. They are not,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a curve, but it's
Yeah.
worth
Yeah. Yeah.
putting effort.
Into yeah. And maybe just really quickly, because in the pre-talk we talked about like mental health a little bit. I'm trying to imagine this, right? Like you move to a city and country that's not your own, right? To build a business, which is a stressful undertaking. There's a big pivot there. Like how did you care for yourself, like your own like mental health in those kind of early? I would imagine there were some like really trying stages of that. But yeah, without that social fabric, it seems like you've built some of that. But anything else that worked really well for you in terms of
Yeah, so I change the therapy depending on the moment where I am, right? So at the beginning, when I moved to Colombia, I was still having my therapist. Then I started doing coaching with a coach that is expert in social entrepreneurs. He helped me a lot to go through a lot of stuff. Then and then I started to get connected to holistic kind of like therapies. So I love like tarot, astrology, and all that has everything that has to do with energies. So I did a tarot course. I go to my astrologist every month. So yeah, so like I find different tools that help me. um, but all the tools, whatever you pick, they start by knowing yourself. So it could be astrology, or it could be human design, or it could be therapy. Like starts by getting to know yourself and how to deal
yeah.
with yourself. So that's a journey that I've been through, and I'm still you never
You never end that
stop
one. Yeah.
learning about yourself.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, look, we are getting to the end, so we're going to jump into the impact round here, where I ask 5 questions, shorter answers, a little more kind of rapid fire here. Um, what is one mistake that you've made that you really hope future entrepreneurs will not make?
Dios, it's difficult. But yeah, it's bringing co-founders that are not aligned.
Mm,
Yeah. So
yep,
like
that's a big one.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, okay, tell me about your biggest challenge in fundraising, and based on that, what is one thing you want all impact investors to know?
I think it's impact investors usually, or they ask for really like detailed metrics on impact that require an external assessment that usually you don't get up to a certain point of the company. So then there's a gap on impact investing funding at the beginning. It's easier to fundraise from VCs, traditional VCs, than funding from impact investors because of the metrics that they are asking to collect, and yeah, and how strict they are with those methodologies. Sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to start a super strict evaluation process.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's what was one of the difficulties I had in fundraising, because our product is obviously impact oriented.
right.
So for the VCs I would be really impact oriented, and for the impact investors I would be really VC oriented. So then
Yeah.
it was like we were in the middle, and that was a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. Anish from Without, which is episode number 1, talks about as a social entrepreneur, you bear more costs, not only by being a more like sustainable and equitable company solving a problem for, in your case, people at the bottom of the pyramid, his case as well, but then you also are asked to have all these other additional costs around like impact measurement, everything, but you're still
It's a
supposed
lot.
to compete in the same free economy that other people
It's
don't
a
have these
lot.
imposed costs. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you need to make the business profitable. And it's like, wait
Yeah.
a minute, like this is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my recommendation, to like
Yep.
really try to build impact investment models that can support pre-seed and seed funding.
Yep.
There's a gap there.
Yep. Very, very cool. I'm eagerly following the Innovative Finance Institute by Ani Patton Powers and a few other folks as they're like working on experimenting with more models here that I think is
Oh,
really
that's great.
important. So, okay, next question. What is one like leadership or manager skill that you wish you could turn on? And if you could, it would make you a more effective team leader.
To follow people's, like each people KPIs. Like I haven't find a way I haven't found a way to like put specific metrics that are actually working per employee, yeah, that's something that I'm finding really challenging, and I will love to find a way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. When you get that figured out, come back on. We'll do a
Okay.
follow up. It's such a common struggle at this stage. I afterwards I can share some other resources on it that I think are useful. But
Please.
I hear you on that one. Okay, very cool. Okay, next question. What is a quote, ritual, or activity that you turn to for strength when things are super hard?
What is like an activity?
Like, yeah, a quote, a ritual, an activity, something that
A
you
ritual.
do. Yep.
Uh-huh. Mm, um, yeah, right now it's talking with these other women. Uh,
Yeah.
that's like really working. Um, and also it's thinking that if I made it through here, like then I can make it again, and it's putting sometimes like just trusting in the flow of life, and like putting in out of the universe. Like there's a point where I say, okay, I made everything I could, and now it's just the universe that will help me, like, because there's like nothing else I could do, I cannot control. So it's coming back to these practices on, more spiritual practices. So yeah, it's really thinking that if this needs to exist, then I cannot control all the outcomes.
Yeah. But yeah, you're doing like all the super hard work to give it the chance of
And then
success.
it's
Yeah,
like,
I love
okay.
that. Yep, yep, yeah. Yeah, very cool. Possibly you mentioned this with the reference to Komal earlier, but yeah, who is another entrepreneur that you think you've learned from and you think we should interview on this show?
Yeah, so I think Komal will be great. I think Marlene from Elsa, she's another Cartier entrepreneur, doing things around sexual harassment in the workplace.
Oh wow.
It's great what she's doing, and I get really inspired by her. And then there's a lot. Most of them are Cartier fellows.
Yeah, it's a good
Because
group.
I will always talk about women, and most of us are like, on that network. But yeah, then there's a really good friend of mine. She built a tech company. It's not like just, impact. Her name is Pamela. She built a big company called B2 Chat in Colombia. Yeah, I think I will stick with those
Yeah,
three at this
cool.
point.
Awesome. Thank you. And some follow-ups there. Okay. Last question. Where can we follow you? Where can we learn more about your incredible work? How can we support you?
Okay. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I told you that's my favorite social media. I'm Mercedes Bidart, with B as a boy. And you can follow Quipu in Quipu Latam in LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm also Mercedes Bidart on Instagram. I have a public profile. And yeah, I think those two are the where I always publish what I'm doing.
Perfect. We'll add those to the show notes as well, along with everything else, references that we've kind of talked about here. Mercedes, so wonderful to talk to you today. I felt like I've learned so much, and I know certainly our listeners as well. So incredible work that you're doing. I love following the journey. Kudos to all your accomplishments, and just very, very grateful for the time that you gave us today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.